Mackenzie Johnston with Tri-State Livestock News, bringing you discussions concerning fair cattle markets. Today we have the opportunity to chat with Justin Tupper. He is the general manager of St. Onge Livestock in St. Onge, South Dakota. Can you tell me a little bit about your background and your involvement with the cattle industry?
Manager here at St. Onge Livestock. My dad owns a sale barn. I've been in sale barns all my life. Vice president of the U.S. Cattlemen's Association. Been active and involved with them for the last 10 or 12 years. So,
what do you feel are the major issues standing in the way of fair cattle markets today?
You know, we're just very concentrated. When you have four major packers buying 85% of the cattle, pretty easy to see how collusion, and we can just get too concentrated in those four guys. And when things are normal, we usually see cattle bought in less than an hour's time for the whole week. Right. So it's pretty hard not to believe that they don't all kind of have their heads together.
So what do you think a solution would be to fix this problem?
You know, one of the things U.S. Cattlemen that we really believe would be a big fix is Senator Grassley's bill. Make these packers compete. You know, the truth of the matter is we have to have a packer. We've got to have a place to go. We need a place to slaughter these animals, and we've got to be able to distribute it. And so what we need to do is make sure that they have to aggressively compete. We saw during this pandemic they've made more money than they've ever made ever. Billions and billions of dollars on the backs of the American producers. So if we could get Senator Grassley's bill where they had to buy 50% of their cattle in the spot market, which is delivery within 14 days, and they have to go out and compete for them, and they have to do it at every plant, there's a reason they don't want to do it. It's because it would make them a lot more competitive, and they would have to get out and get aggressive to buy those cattle instead of just be bid takers. We would be able to aggressively work the market.
You were recently featured in an article written by Rachel Gable in the Fence Post, and you made the statement that cattle and beef trade are a delicate balance. Can you elaborate on your thoughts concerning cattle and beef trade?
And I don't claim to be an expert on imports and exports, but I do know that we do a lot of importation of beef. We do a lot of exportation of beef, and I think in the times that we're in, we need those markets. We need to be able to sell that beef across the country and in other countries, and we also need to understand that we do import some products, and that if we stop 100% of these exports, it could have a negative effect. Now, do I want American beef to come first? Absolutely, without question. I think they should be prioritizing American beef. But do I think just a blatant stop of all exports and all imports at this time would be a way to find a solution to why our cattle are bringing what they are versus what the box beef trade is? No, I do not think that would be a solution that would bring back dollars to the producer. But in all, we've got to have that balance between imports, exports, and we've got to have our trade partners happy.
So you talk about prioritizing American beef. What is your thoughts on mandatory country of origin labeling?
You know, I think it doesn't matter whether it's your shirt, your shoes, your hat. Everything on it tells you where it came from, where it's made. And I think the country, people, the consumer, they want to know. They want to know where their beef comes from. It's the safest protein on the planet, and I think they deserve to know. So I think country of origin labeling would be more than prudent, not only now, but in all times. We should be able to know where our beef comes from.
Do you know very many cattle feeders that need to get cattle slaughtered but can't currently get them moved?
You know, that's a great question. I know some places that are fairly current, that are not backed up totally. But I also know some places in the southern plains that haven't been able to get any in for 3 or 4 weeks, so they're way backed up. So I think there's a mix out there in the countryside of depending on where you are, you know, and how many cattle are backed up. You hear maybe we backed up 1 million. I don't know if anybody knows exactly, but I think there's a mix. There may not be quite as many as some people think, but I think there's definitely a log jam here.
Obviously, we don't know the numbers on these backed up cattle. Do you think we'll get through this backlog by the end of the year?
I've been asked that question many times, and I don't know how to answer it. My biggest concern probably now is how do we get the consumer back to buying it? When we get to the supply chain filled back up again, and box beef prices, I'm looking at it right now, down 22 cents again to $2.95. It was $2.07 before we started this coronavirus. We've got to make sure we didn't disenfranchise the consumer. We need to make sure that they're going to come back and buy a very wholesome and safe product at a price that they can afford. Now, that is a tough double-edged sword, because as producers, we need box beef to be up there so we can make more money and return more for that fat steer. But we also have to find that balance where the consumer can afford to buy it, and we can move it in a fashion that gets it through the supply chain without a glut and everything backing up.
With box beef dropping, we're obviously starting to see our cattle markets kind of back off a little bit. What's your outlook for the markets going forward in the next few months, and then also for calves this fall?
Another great question. I think the obvious answer to the short term is pretty scary. Yeah. They've been bidding 117, I've heard this week, which is probably 3 lower than the high mark from last week of 120 that I'd heard of. But you've got a June live board. Let me take a peek right now. That is at 95.72. That goes off in less than 30 days. So there's quite a disparity between 117 and 95.72, and supposedly those things are supposed to converge. So I would think the short term, we definitely have some challenges in front of us. Now, if demand picks back up, the country gets opened up like we need to, maybe we can move through this fairly swiftly. And I think that's going to dictate how the market is this fall. If we're still reeling, trying to get cattle caught up in August and September, we're going to have a hard time thinking this calf market's going to take a big jump. But very much unknown. And I think there's a wide range of ideas of what it may or may not be out there. And I guess I don't have any direct sense, but I think the short term, we definitely have some work to do.
We've had senators, leaders, our president requested that the DOJ investigate meat packer pricing. Mm-hmm. We haven't heard anything from that yet. What is your thoughts on that investigation and that whole situation?
Well, I think what I read yesterday about one of JBS's subsidiaries in the chicken industry indicting several of their CEOs on price collusion in chicken factories is probably somewhat encouraging if we want to look at what could possibly come down the line on the beef side. So cautiously optimistic. How's that? If
you could sum it up in one sentence, what do you think the cattle industry needs most today?
Unity. We've preached it. We cannot, as cattle groups and as cattle producers, be infighting and get any solutions done. I think the advantage goes to whatever we're up against when everybody's going 5 different directions. And we know everybody's an independent producer and independent thinkers and a lot of that in the cattle side, but there are a lot of things that we could agree on, and we've got to put away some of those things and get into the war chest with everybody involved, and that's how we're going to move things, is everybody can get on the same page, at least on the issues we can agree on.
So cattle producers have been facing rough markets here for the past few years, and then things really fell out of bed here in the past couple months. Have you seen the effect of these tough cattle markets in your area?
Yeah, I think the answer would be yes, but what happens, and well know this, in our area, it's the fall when guys sell calves and they go to the bank to renew. That's when we're really going to see the effects. Equity's been lost, and when these guys go to renew their notes for the year, depending on what calves bring, that's when we're really going to feel it in this part of the world. I think everybody's bracing for it, but I don't know that we'll see it until we get to fall for a lot of the guys out here.
What do you see happening to the American cattle producer if nothing comes of this DOJ investigation and no significant changes are implemented within our cattle markets?
Well, that's just not a world I want to think about, I guess, if I had to answer. I think we have to get something done here. Senator Grassley's bill, we've got to make some changes to the way these cattle are marketed. We've got to make sure that there's a fair market out there for everybody. Right now, a lot of these big corporate feeders, they have sweetheart deals with the packer, and of course, they don't want to lose those. And and it's they don't want to give up their sweetheart deal, and so we've got to make changes so we can have a viable market for everybody across the cattle industry. And I really believe we can. I've never seen as significant a movement in some of these areas as we have during this crisis. So as long as we can keep everybody energized and we can get on the same page, I really believe we can get something done.
Do you have any closing statements you'd like to make regarding these cattle markets?
I just think I'd love to see some unity, and it's good to see people getting involved, the people that have never been involved in some of these things, and they're understanding now that for our way of life to continue, you may have to get involved, and we may have to do some things that aren't all that comfortable, but we've got to do it if we want to continue to be viable.